So now we're live. Hey everybody on YouTube and Zoom. We'll get started here pretty soon. Just want to welcome everybody in. We'll get started here in probably about 30 seconds or so. Dr. Lauer, Ken, are you guys ready? Let's do it. Okay. So welcome everybody to the USA Hockey webinar series presented by BioSteel and Pure Hockey. Really excited to have our ADM manager or ADM technical director, Ken Martell, on the call. He's back on. And then Dr. Larry Lauer. And I'm really excited for this mental game talk and, just trying to get better for our players, coaches, and everybody involved. So Ken, Larry, the show is all yours. Let me know if you need anything.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Just a quick introduction for Larry too. He's currently the mental skills specialist for the United States Tennis Association. Got his PhD back in the day from UNC Greensboro. Was formerly the director of the Coach Ed Education and Development at the Institute of Sport Youth Study for Youth Sports at Michigan State. Along the same time he was there, he was actually also our mental skills specialist with our national team development program. Larry's also listed as one of the most 100 most influential sport educators in America by the Institute for International Sport. No stranger to ice hockey, obviously. He's gone to the dark side here the last, I don't know what, maybe 8 years. How long have you been with USTA now? It's getting up there.
It'll be 7 years in 1 week.
Yeah. So, but has kids that play. Larry's a hockey guy from way back, has done a lot in our sport and made contributions actually to a lot of different sports because he is on the board of directors with the United States Center of Coaching Excellence. So again, across the board, Larry's got a great resume, a lot of experience, and welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. I was really excited to have this opportunity, and I appreciate you bringing up the National Team Development Program, Ken, because that's one of my proudest moments, just to be part of that for 8+ years when I was in Michigan. I was surprised they let me go from East Lansing during the day to actually drive to Ann Arbor later in the day, watch practice, and actually meet with people. I thought maybe they'd run me out of town every time I came out there, but yeah, it's such a great program, and I feel that a lot of what I brought to USTA Player Development was a result of many things, of course, but probably NTDP was one of the most impactful experiences I had working with the coaches and the staff and the players. I was fortunate to work with many great coaches there, many of who everybody on this webinar knows. So I learned so much from them. I do know that Coach John Hines, I think he had me on probation the first year. I didn't know it. My first year, let me do a little bit. And then after the first year, he's like, okay, Larry, I think you're ready for more. And I'm like, oh, okay, appreciate that. So then, he gave me more responsibilities, but I think it's been great. And currently now, I help coach my son's 12 and under team, although like everybody else, we're on hiatus. And so it's just so great that USA Hockey's doing this. We're trying to do something similar in player development and tennis, where we reach out to people, we provide ideas, resources similarly. And, I think the mental game, what I've seen, my job now, I work with professional tennis players and juniors aspiring to be professional tennis players, that everybody's trying to find ways to get better right now. And they're looking for ways to improve. And I think the mind is one of those things that we can spend more time on right now.
Well, in our sport, you had done a lot of work on, basically mental toughness, emotional control, taking penalties, a lot of things that sometimes our players have trouble with. how they respond to adverse situations. That, I thought that was certainly can translate across sports. Anything that has been new in that area for you, working with tennis versus maybe hockey?
Yeah, well, I think in tennis, we obviously have to look at the individual. And then I always try to think about bringing that back to what I do in hockey now as a youth coach and helping my son as well. But is just trying to appreciate the individual, communicate with the individual, understand where they're coming from, meet them where they're at. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as adults is we ask players to respect us, but we don't treat them with respect by honoring their individuality. I was just spending time talking with Gabe Polsky, who produced the movie In Search of Greatness, and Wayne Gretzky was interviewed on that, and just talking about allowing him to be creative, and look what it turned into. One of the greatest players, maybe the greatest player of all time, who invented different ways to play the game, whether pulling up at the blue line and waiting for the next wave to come, or playing from behind the net. So I think it's been an amazing thing what USA Hockey's done to not stifle creativity, to allow the skill to come out in the way we're doing things, whether it's through our coaching program, how we are tightening down on the hooking and the holding, and really forcing kids to learn to skate and the puck handle and pass the puck, really forcing hopefully creativity into the game and the way we train them. So I think some of the biggest stuff, and I'll share my screen for a minute and then look forward to taking more questions. But some of the biggest stuff that we've been talking about is how do you really help someone become resilient? That's what the focus has been on. Because when I started, the question came to me from many people, but including Jose Higueras, who worked with Roger Federer, and he worked with Jim Courier and Pete Sampras and the greats in the game. How do you help players learn to become champions? And we had this thing in American tennis where we were struggling playing under pressure, and we were trying to what's going on there. And I really felt like we were leaning on the idea that we needed to be amazing and play perfectly to win, versus really accepting the reality of sport, which is that it's messy, it's open, it's chaotic, and that's how it's meant to be. It's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to go just your way. And when you can accept that, you can really start, I think, to thrive in pressure situations. That's where it begins. So we really certainly try to talk about this resilient, confident competitor. And I'm going to share this with everybody. You can see my screen, but when you're faced with a challenge, with an adversity, a negative stimulus, do you channel your emotion with composure, or do you let your emotion run wild, intense, uncontrolled in your response? Are you curious and open-minded on figuring out what to do? Are you closed-minded and rigid and not really coming up with new ideas? Are you focused on actions and solutions? Are you only focused on the problem and kind of acting helpless? Are you adapting and bouncing back? Or are you stuck, stale, frozen? Are you embracing challenges? Are you kind of being the victim? That this has happened to me, woe is me. And this is a way to think about, when you look at a young player, they're not going to be always resilient, but they have the capacity to be resilient. And we got to start talking about these things of, what do you control? Well, there are certain things you can control. Your response to what happens to you, not what actually happens. And sort of bring the attention to that and helping them start to deal with failure and losing and mistakes in a good way. And how we coach them makes all the difference in that. And that's really been what I've been focused on. Here's another way to look at it. I talk about the fragile mind versus the resilient mind. In the fragile mindset, you just want things to go your way, and you don't have to think too much about it, right? I just want kind of my talent to come out. I just want it to happen. I don't have to think about it. I don't want to have to really prepare mentally. Whereas on the resilient side, I can analyze what's going to happen in this game in a deep way, and I can get it back to the simple. Sean McCann at the USOPC talks about this all the time. You're moving from complex to simple as you're preparing for a game and as you get closer to the game. But you have to teach kids the ability to do this, and it starts with the way you talk to them. that, okay, here's the concepts we're teaching in practice. Now here are the couple of things you need to focus on going into the game, and helping them discipline their mind to focus on the keys. You know, the fragile mind wants to have tricks. You know, if I just do this, it works. What we've been honing in on in tennis, that it's all about habits and skills. And this started all the way back at NTDP for me and before, that the mental game is not about tricks. It's about what you do every single day. And if you can put the training in, you can trust it. You know, the fragile mind, I tried it once, didn't work out with it. You know, the resilient mind, I'll find a way. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll stay with it. You know, someone asked Billie Jean King, I imagine most people know who that is, the tennis player who really changed the game for women. And she said, you know, one time they asked, what do you do if your routine's not working? You can do it again. Like literally just like keep doing it until it works, like until you get ready to play and so you can deal with it. So, you know, the fragile mind, it's not perfect. It's not good enough. And a resilient mind is like, there's going to be struggles. I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to find a way. I'm going to be successful. And I've heard this a lot in tennis, Ken, and that is, I hope it clicks all. Like, I'm just going to go to a tournament and it's going to finally all come together. I'm like, really? I hope it does, but it's not all going to just click in one moment. It's going to be the work you did and how you prepared yourself and how you dealt with the things you needed to improve. Because the worst thing for a coach is to sit there and listen to a player saying, oh, poor me, but they're not willing to address the things that are most important to take the next step. So the fragile mind is just wanting things to go right. The resilient mind is really actively okay with what goes on in the arena, okay? Knows that there's going to be issues, but also knows that he or she's going to find a way, that team's going to find a way, and I'm good with that messiness.
You know, I go back to maybe John Hines, like, and a lot of our really good coaches, they talk about process, right? Yes. Those habits and process that you do in practice that helps prepare. And then the points you just brought up about coaches and the environment that we create to help our players address, you know, the hardships that they come across, you know, just every single day, right? I mean, we try and talk about, you know, adaptability, resilience. I mean, I go back to one of the things that you were doing, the example you gave us a number of years ago with the rubber Super Bowl versus the egg.
Oh, yeah.
Visual sticks in my head all the time, still to this day. You know, we want to be able to bounce back strong versus hit the wall and crack, right? But focus on it, on the process, the things that are under your control. Sports are, what sport it is, there's mistakes happen all over the place, right? And
right.
Helping people deal with that. You know, so maybe what are some things, you know, habit-wise that we can start to look for to help our players build as we go? Even, I mean, you're working with 12-year-olds, you know, with PV hockey players. You know, what are the things that you might be doing with them to get them started on a path of being more resilient?
That's a great question. It's one that's often asked. And I think the biggest thing we have to do is teach them how to learn, and teach them how to learn through adversity. You know, nowhere else right now do our children face as much adversity usually as they do in sport, unless they have a tough life, you know, where they're asked to do more at a young age. A lot of kids aren't experiencing that they're in a good situation, that are able to play hockey, or able to play tennis, you know, sports that do cost quite a bit of money at a young age. So where does that adversity come from? It comes from sport. In school, a lot of these kids overachieve. They do well, and they're high achievers. But in hockey or in tennis, it doesn't matter if you're a high achiever. You're going to make mistakes. I promise you, Sid Crosby would tell you that he made mistakes all along the way, and he got back up. And so this is what we tried to hone in on when I started 7 years ago with the USTA Player Development. We had a group of kids training who were younger in New York at our Billie Jean King National Tennis Center up there where the US Open's played. And we decided to start by helping them to learn through their mistakes. That was the beginning point. We knew that they were going to make a ton of mistakes, that they were going through this period of really learning the motor skills, learning the strategies of the game, that you were going to have so many errors. And so the kids that were going to survive were going to be the ones who were able to get through that. And so then what we had to do was say, we had to teach from that perspective that mistakes are okay. You know, some of the best coaches I worked with, because we didn't talk about this, but I was a hockey director back in the day in Charlotte and then up in Philadelphia, or Pensacola, New Jersey. But my best coaches that I worked with were the ones who, they're okay with kids. They were doing Russian circles and they were just blowing out and going into the wall because they were pushing the edge, right? They were pushing to the edge of what they were capable of. And I think that's what you ask of the kids is like, look, let's get clear that I want you, here's some things I want you to work on. We're going to put you in an environment to go after it. And then you're going to have issues and that's okay. And we're going to be here to support you, but we want you to try and figure it out. Right. And so I think that's, you know, it's so great. I think even back like in the 90s and early 2000s when USA Hockey started going in more of the small games approach and letting the game teach, I think the game can teach these things if we get out of the way a lot of the times. I know for sure, again, that, you know, people adapt. They're resilient when given the chance. And what does someone need to be resilient, to adapt? They need to embrace the challenge, have a growth mindset, look at it as an opportunity to grow. They need to have skills. So we have to start teaching kids mental skills, coping skills, the ability to focus, to set process goals versus only focusing on the outcome, to be able to talk to themselves in a way where they believe versus putting themselves down. All these different things to visualize. And then that's the second pillar. And then the third thing you got to be able to do is support them, right? At the right level. We can't do everything for them, but we can't leave them out there alone either. And so it's a tricky balance there. And I can talk more about that later, but these are kind of the three things you need if you want someone to adapt. You have to put them under adversity. You have to teach them skills, which is the only ethical way to actually put them under adversity, is to actually teach them the skill to deal with it. And then you got to support them through it. And support looks different, whether it's challenge or actual, you know, encouragement. So to me, you know, at a young age, helping them learn that their mistakes are part of the journey. And we talk all the time about other pros who talk about it, other players. We have them come in and talk to the kids about it. Our coaches talk about it, get them on board with it. This is how we learn. This is how we get better. And then the successes feel that much better. So it's learn from mistakes. And then we put in place the breathe and believe technique. And so we had to get really simple at the youngest ages. We'd say, okay, something's going on you're not happy with. You're missing your forehand. Or in this case, maybe you're flubbing the puck when you get it. All right. Take a moment, breathe, tell yourself one thing that will help you. Maybe it's something your coach tells you to do. Maybe it's something that your parents tell you to do or something that you know. Pick one simple thing that you can do. And so we start to see the kids is they make a couple mistakes on the forehand. They step back. All right, come on, just go for it. Go for the shot. You know, get behind the ball, whatever, right? And then you see this thing evolve over time where now you're talking about 14, 15, 16, and it gets more complex. Or now you're starting to talk about, you know, they understand with the breathing, you know, maybe they're going to a towel and they're wiping off and then they're thinking, okay, you know, they start bringing this concept of acceptance in. Like, hey, man, like mistakes are going to happen. It's okay. It's just one shot. Take a breath. What are you going to do here? Commit right now. What are you doing? Oh, yeah, I'm going wide serve open court. I got this all day because I practiced it a million times. And that's what we're trying to boil it down to. And I don't think hockey's any different, that, you know, from an individual level perspective, that you want the kids to really dial into their strengths and especially in game time, and then work at the things that they need to improve with an open mind. And the way we coach them makes all the difference. You know, if we allow them to make mistakes, we put them in an environment where they're challenged and we help pick them up and encourage them, then it's amazing. And you guys know this better than I do, what you start to see. You see kids not afraid to fail and not, you know, not getting as frustrated when they blow a tire and they go into the boards. And they go, okay, you know, I pushed it there and I got to go for it again, you know. So these are the kinds of things I try to do. Never overreact to a mistake, because for you, it might be just getting that out. For them, oh my God, the coach thinks I did something terrible. I don't, you know, I don't think people can really understand the psychological impact of a coach on a young person, because I heard it so many times in my practice. Coach thinks I suck, or coach thinks I'm bad, and then I'll kind of dig and like, yeah, they told me, don't puck handle anymore, just send it deep. And they're thinking like, well, I must suck if I can't puck handle, right? So it's really trying to help the kids understand that you're gonna make mistakes, it's okay. And we then as coaches have to be very composed and controlled in what we do, and understand the language that we use makes a huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Our actions subtly speak to kids. Like they're always watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll pick up on those cues. And it's hard as coaches. We're emotional. We want to win. We're in the moment too. But I know that we're going to have a coach coming up here as a guest next week, and who coaches our NTDB program. You used to always say, act as if.
Mm-hmm.
Like you as the coach have to act as if everything is ready. You have to pretend or whatever, for the benefit of your players. You may be bound up inside, but you're the adult, right? I think the thing that you brought up right away, though, that learning how to learn is, I don't care what it is, right? We had Marty St. Louis on early on in our podcasts, and one of Marty's biggest things is like, I was the separator for me and what everybody else was. I was always trying to get better, always trying to learn. And those people that they learn how to learn and embrace that, over the long haul, they continue to get better and better. So all this ties together, but a lot of what you're talking about, we say simple, not easy.
Yes.
Right? Pretty simple in concept, but is there anything from a coach's standpoint that you can give them advice when in the moment, for example, how do you maybe take a step back so that you're not displaying the wrong thing for your player in the moment? You're going to give support.
Yeah, that's a great question. And trust me, when I'm behind a bench, or I've coached baseball for many years too, youth baseball, when I'm standing at first base and my son's at the plate, I promise you my heart rate goes up, or when he goes into pitch. I'm no different than the other people on this call. I want him to be successful, and I think, God, I hope he hits this ball hard, because that means I did a great job. Wait, Larry, what are you thinking? Like, this has nothing to do with you right now. You're just standing here, and you're going to tell him either to run to second or to go through first base. That's it. So I think we just have to check ourselves, because it's natural that emotional attachment we have with our children, or as a coach, just really wanting to be successful. That's great. I want you all to strive for success and be the best coach you can be. But that's going to come from their learning, not from winning and losing. And to me, the best way I've ever heard this described, Ken, was a friend of mine who was a CEO at Think Detroit Police Athletic League in Detroit, Tim Ritchie. And he said, the measure of your season and your coaching is not your win-loss record. It's your record of how many kids come back and how many leave. I was like, okay, now you got me. Now I'm hooked, because if your kids want to come back and they want to be there with you, you've got a shot. So who cares if they passed the puck through the middle and the other team picked it off and went on a breakaway and scored? That stuff's going to happen. That gives you a chance to teach. That's a teachable moment, and that's what it's all about. So now, more practically, I've made a living of doing this for myself and the coaches I've worked with. That you need to, if you're struggling with your emotion, step away from the stimulus, take a breath, take a couple breaths, think about what's most important right now. Let your assistant coach or someone else step in. You're a team. Give yourself that emotional space if you feel like you're starting to lose it a little bit. I hear it a lot in the rinks, people screaming out, yelling out. And, I think at the end of the day, you want to know when you walk out of that bench or off the ice after a practice, that those kids, they really look up to you, they respect you, and so do the parents. So I don't think, I've never felt like you know, because I made a lot of mistakes in the past, Ken, but I never felt like I wanted to have my character be less because I wanted to win so badly or because I lost my way. I did it at times when I was younger. I spent time in the penalty box for sure. So,
well, you know, as coaches, I think all of us, we want to help.
yes.
It's one of the things that makes us a coach. Like, it's why we donate time. It's why our youth, you know, we do what we do. But, you know, sometimes it's that misunderstanding of how we're really helping and how we're not helping, you know.
Well,
I have a question that kind of rolled in here from Lee. It says, well, there's some basic principles that go across the board with mental preparation and resiliency in athletes. I'm curious how to adapt in a team environment. While tennis is more of an individual sport, can peer pressure be an effective, positive influencing tool?
yes, absolutely. And it's one that I feel like we use well at NTDP. My belief, and I did this in tennis too when I worked for the men's tennis team at Michigan State University, that you try to get, and I'm stealing this, you know, from Barry Smith, but you try to get the core of your team, your leaders, your influencers bought into your philosophy, right? That we're on the same page. This is how we're going to go about things. And that's how you can start winning the locker room. Because the players are always looking to the other players, especially as they get older. You know, maybe the 10 and unders and the 8 and unders, you know, they're still, it's all about the parents, and then they're tying the skates and whatever. But as they get older, they're looking to each other to see how they're reacting to these things. And if you have, especially 14, 16 on up, those players speaking the language, then you have a chance to have the kind of culture that you want to have. And it begins too in the locker room, but also on the bench. You'll want to have those guys, those influencers on the bench who are saying, hey guys, yeah, that was a tough shift, but let's come right back and have a good one here. Let's get the puck deep. Let's move it, you know, whatever, right? And in that talk, that's what I want to hear on the bench. Again, young kids aren't going to do so much of it, right? They might just celebrate when they score a goal, or, you know, and so you're teaching the talk on the bench by modeling it as a coach. And so to me, you know, if you want a resilient environment, you got to go all the way back to, you know, training it and asking for it. Coach Jose Higueras, I mentioned him earlier, he always says start at the beginning. And what are your expectations from the start? And are you communicating your expectations? Our expectations are you're going to make mistakes and you're going to grow from them. You're going to give a great effort. You're going to listen and you're going to support one another. And we're going to lay that out. And then we're going to put you in situations in practice where that's going to get tested. And I'm going to help you through it. So we're going to do battle drills, and people are going to get a bit edgy and a bit irritable. And that's okay. How are we going to respond to that? Because in the game of hockey, I don't get to choose if someone comes by and whacks me with their stick, or, you know, kind of presses me a little hard and there's not supposed to be checking. That's just what it is. All I can do is respond to my environment in a good way. And so beginning that discussion, you know, is so important. And if I share my screen real quick, maybe, is that all right, Ken? I wanted to show one thing here. Am I sharing my screen now? I'm sorry.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So I missed on that one. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Misfire. Missed the net. So here we go. Guys can see it now?
Yes.
So I'm going to just jump ahead here real quick, but if you want to develop a resilient, what I call resilient, confident competitor, you have to work on 5 levels, okay? First, you have to get to know the person, as I mentioned earlier, and understand who they are, their history, what they bring to the table. When they're young, often you're getting to know the parents more than the kid. As they're older, you need to know what their hockey experiences are, who they were coached by, have they been on a lot of winning teams, have they lost a lot, how have they been sort of made responsible on their teams, etc. Once you get to know them, you need to create awareness through helping them see their tendencies, their strengths, areas they need to improve. So if you want someone to be resilient, they're going to have to be aware of the way they're thinking. In the moment where, all right, something happens to them, something goes wrong, you get behind 2 goals in the first period, Are they thinking, oh, this is awful, that's terrible, they're awfulizing, we shouldn't be losing to this team, they're shooting, they're doing all these sort of what we'd call in cognitive behavioral therapy distortions, these faulty thoughts. Are they aware of these things that they do, and are you able to help them break them down? Well, it starts with awareness, and then I think it gets into commitment, and the commitment of the good daily habits: how you sleep, how you eat, how you train, how you balance your school with your hockey, how you do these things, your routines, your schedule. They make up the base of what you're going to do, right? I've never said, Ken, to any coach I've ever worked with, including Heinze, because he would have laughed at me. Look, I can come in and fix all this. I'm the guy. I just do my 1% as a mental coach. And if that base isn't strong, that they're not fit, they're not sleeping well, my job got a lot harder. And so I'm putting Band-Aids on wounds that aren't going to heal. So the base has to be strong. If you want a resilient competitor, as my mentor, Coach Jose Higueras, would say, well, then they got to learn the game. And so strong training, the way you do things is very important. Having routines, having great training, having discipline, and then you can really, now you're working on all these things all the time, but the things you do in mental training, like teaching them self-talk strategies and doing visualization, have more payoff because I'm a well-rounded player. So I can imagine myself going into different situations and being successful. And then at the top of the pyramid is, it's great you're teaching these mental skills. As I said before, you got to put them under pressure. So if you want somebody to be resilient, you got to train for it. Put them in battle games, put them in situations that are difficult, but not unreasonable, where if they really apply themselves, they can figure it out. And then you support them through it. So I hope this pyramid model helps. You got to work on all 5 levels kind of simultaneously, but you can't really skip any of them if you want to have a resilient, confident competitor.
Hey, Larry, I have a question about the pressure training. And finding it hard, you're working in an individual sport. How do you incorporate that pressure training when you don't have the audience and you don't have other things? And how can we translate that into hockey and having pressure? Because, as they get older, there's more pressure, whether it's outside pressure, inside pressure from themselves or parents or whoever. How can we help them with that pressure training?
Well, I'll start first, Dave, with that. You want to create the pressures that are inherent to your environment. And I want to try to minimize the pressures that are unnecessary, as I would say, piling on. So parents being overly critical, I'm going to try and change that and remove that because that's just too much. But I don't want to remove you having to score a goal in the last 30 seconds. That's good for you. Or having to hold the lead in the last 30 seconds, or having to get out of your zone when you're a man down. These are the things that are awesome, right? And figuring it out. So there's situations that are inherent to the game, going into another building and the crowd being against you. That's amazing. I've had that experience in different sports, and it's so cool to quiet them. We had a great experience at NTDP where we knew we were going to play in Russia, and it was going to be anti-US for sure. And our whole thing before they left was like, hey, how amazing is it going to be when we quiet them? And we're out there doing what we do. And the boys went out and did an amazing job. So it's really changing this and looking at it as an opportunity. In tennis, we get really creative. We'll do things like you only get one serve. We have a game where the first point is worth 40 points, 0, 15, 30, 40, making sure that they're ready to play on the first point. We'll do things where you have to win 3 points to get one. There's different things you can do to really apply either way, through the way you're doing your scoring, through the different constraints. All right, guys, we're not doing this in this game right now, okay? Only passes. We're not puck handling or whatever, right? You guys do these kinds of things. So you create these constraints or these scoreboard pressures that you apply pressure. Someone chasing, a couple people chasing, to really challenge players. And I find it, the more that it's like the game, the better that it is. But we will get creative. One of the things we'll do is, all right, if a player is struggling was swinging out under pressure, that they we call decelerate on the swing. One of the things that we try sometimes, we say, okay, we're playing a game in practice. If you decel, you automatically lose a point. I'm taking it away. That's my point. Boom, gone. If you accelerate and miss, I'll let you play that point again. Now, this is kind of the learning process, right? Because we have to get to a point now where we get back to where each point counts for what the outcome is and dealing with that in a good way. But if we're at an earlier stage where they're having a hard time letting go and swinging out, we're going to go ahead and can change the constraints so we can get what we want, because we want to reinforce the behavior that we want. And we want to take away reinforcement for the behavior that we don't want. We don't want them hitting moon balls and getting rewarded for that. And we don't want kids, just hanging on to the puck and never passing and being rewarded for that. So we have to change the reinforcements so that we get the behavior that we want. Now instead of just telling them, we're creating games that facilitate what we want. So to get people to be resilient, to deal with pressure well, you got to try to find ways to change the conditions. Guys that lose the puck, all right, and they get frustrated and they slap their stick on the ice. We would be doing a drill in practice where, guess what? I'm going to send 3 guys you're going to lose the puck, and then you're going to have to chase them back down and get it, or whatever it is, right? So we're going to find ways to challenge them. Our coaches get pretty specific to this. I know this is a funny story. I only tell it because it's funny, but one of our players was at the US Open, and we have a towel, and the player was pretty angry at the way the match was going, and so he threw his towel on the ground and wouldn't hand it to the ball kid. And so guess what the teaching plan was for the next practice after that US Open match? This is a pro. All right, we're going onto the court, and you're going to be a ball kid, and I'm playing, and I'm going to show you how to hand a towel. And then the coach literally threw the towel on the ground. How does that feel? It doesn't feel good, does it? So again, I think we can do this in a positive way, but the point is, if we want to teach something, we got to get really specific to the thing that it is and try to make it as game-like as possible. And then we'll make it less game-like if there's some real struggles with it, like I mentioned with the deceleration and getting kids to swing out. But then we got to bring it back into the game as soon as we can. Does that answer the question?
Big time. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's really important, I think, for coaches to, understand and realize that there's those other ways that you can get your outcome that you want, it's whether it's a point system or adding points. And I really like that, hey, this first point or the first serve counts as 40 points, or whatever it is, because, you always hear, hey, my team was never ready to start the game. We're never ready. And then you go back to their practice, and guess what they do in practice? They're stretching for 10 minutes before the beginning of practice, and they're doing a very non-competitive drill. So how does that relate? How can you make it realistic and transferable? And I think that's the important part.
I'd like to segue off that real quickly if I can, because one of the things that we talk about all the time is make practice like a match, make practice like a game. If you want to be tough, resilient, competitive in a game, then you have to train that way. And so we want to do things on a daily basis that match up with what we do in a game. I don't want game day to be so different from practice day or an off day that game day becomes huge. Oh my God, I got a game, and now I got to do all these rituals, and I got to visualize, and I got to talk to my coach, and I got to do these exercises. Why? We know when we study the Olympics that it's the ones who can go into that environment knowing that it's huge, but stay with their routines that are successful. So why not build that into training every day? So what we talk about is daily mental practice that, all right, let's get our mind straight before we ever step on the ice or on the court. Let's take time to breathe and quiet our mind, mindful breathing, clear out all the noise from the day and the cell phone and the school and all that junk, dial it in. Now let's visualize what you're going to do when you step on the ice. See your success, see your commitment very vividly, dial into that and become committed to it. And then remember what you're grateful for, the opportunity to work with these great coaches, with these great teammates, to be on the ice. This just changes the whole thing. This is what Kobe Bryant talked about. He would meditate in the morning so he could get the right mindset from the start of the day. And so if you want to really perform under pressure, you got to make your practice days more like your game days. And that means with the way you prepare too. Get yourself mentally ready. Don't go on the ice and think that that's supposed to be the warm up. Do what you can off the ice, including visualizing and breathing. I know with my son, I asked him, I interviewed him the other day about this. My son is 11. He plays in this 12 and under team. I said, well, remember when I asked you to do visualization in the car when we're driving to the rink? Because we got like a 35-minute drive. He's like, yeah. I'm like, did you think that was weird? He's like, no, I thought it was kind of interesting. And I tried it. And then what I realized was, like I feel more ready. And then I start thinking about the way I'm going to do things. It tends to start happening on the ice. I'm like, that's kind of the idea behind it. It just kind of sparks your mind and prepares you to do things. So in his funny little way, he was telling me that, yeah, this works, Dad, and you're not crazy, which was nice to hear. But if you want to be, what I would say is that obviously there's difference between game day and practice day. In practice, we're working on things, we're analyzing things more deeply. On game day, it's game plan, more specific, more simple, especially as you move up. But still, if you're treating your practices more like games, and you're making the kids, even if it's just 5 minutes, take a moment to think about what we're going to do when we go on the ice, see yourself being successful. Let's go. We got a great opportunity to get better. You're starting to build that mindful practice into their pre-practice, which is so important. And then I think after practice as well, reflecting and making that part of your routine.
So like this ties in so much with what we talk about, trying to get our coaches to realize in terms of skill acquisition, trying to get them to make their drills more representative of the game. But I think the missing aspect sometimes is we just look at it from a learning the game standpoint versus keeping in mind that we know pressure changes performance.
Yes.
Right? At every level. So how do we put in and make it from an emotional standpoint a little bit too, right? Like you got to tie all that in. And you mentioned visualization, and you mentioned visualization with your 11-year-old. So from a coaching perspective, for those in the audience that are going to go out and work with 11-year-olds or younger kids, when you talk to them about visualization, what do you have them visualize? Is it scoring the game-winning Stanley Cup goal, or is it something else?
Well, I think that he already does on his own when we watch hockey together. What I tend to have him visualize before practice or games, I let him also visualize whatever he wants. I don't tell him everything, but I'd say maybe think about 2 or 3 things that you're working on in your game and applying those tonight in the game. That maybe this puck handling you're trying to do, or receiving the puck on your backhand. Imagine yourself doing that. So he's pretty good about sort of picking out things that he's working on in practice and then thinking about how he would also apply them in the game. I started out really simple because I was unsure how, when it's your own child, oftentimes they don't want to hear it from you. That's just the way it is. And so I was like, look, what do you think about, maybe kind of working through in your mind a couple things that Coach Brock has been telling you. He's like, yeah, I'll do that. And so just seeing it, and then I just add little tidbits as we go along. And when he started to recognize, because after practice we'd be driving home and say, oh, what do you think that visualization helped you? I'd be like, oh yeah, it made me think about what I was going to do today, and then I went out and worked on it. So just a little prompt. So instead of force feeding it, just kind of opening the idea and then asking the questions. But I think at the start, it's really just simple things, things that you're trying to work on in your game, and just imagine yourself doing those things. And then you can do the fun ones as well, like scoring the game-winning goal and stuff like that. So
for me, it was always, see yourself doing the routine things that you would normally do in the game extraordinarily well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the way it was always brought to me. You mentioned working with a son or a daughter and those things. So we do have a question that kind of ties into that. The question is, how do you manage maybe a coach who is extremely hard on his son or daughter and not as hard on the other players? Any advice for that particular question?
Well, it feels like maybe someone's going through something there, so I'm going to do my best. So I've been there for sure, because that's more likely to happen than the reverse. Because again, coaches really want to seem fair in many ways. So I think you gotta have a relationship with that person. Of course, you can't just come at them bluntly. A lot of times they're not going to respond well to that. But if you do have a relationship with that coach, being able to say, yeah, just, doesn't seem like he's responding or she's responding well to you right now, huh? Like they're not listening. Yeah, okay, well, let me talk with them. And it's not because what you're saying is great. It's just that maybe they need to hear it from someone else, right? Because we all talk about it as parents, like our kids see us as the dumbest people and everybody else is smarter. So that's just the reality. So then, and like I had this conversation when I was coaching a few years ago in Little League Baseball with a good friend of mine. We would trade off. So if something was going on with his son, I would talk to him. If something was going on with my son, he would talk to my son. And we even made that kind of a rule between us. So, but I think it's kind of bringing awareness to this obviously isn't working that well, or your child's not responding well to this. So maybe there's another way to go about it. As they get older, so I did this with high school age basketball players who are a little bit more mature. Now this was girls, so maybe us guys aren't ready to pull this off yet in high school. I don't know. But I worked with them, but we said, look, I want you to tell the parents at the parent meeting the things that they do well. And then I want you to ask them for things that you need from them, which were the things that we all knew that they weren't doing well. Mm-hmm. And so we prepared for it. The girls made their plan. They did a run through with me, and then they did it. And so it was so much better because then it was coming from them instead of from another adult. But so the older the kids are, you want to empower them to communicate, empower them and teach them in a respectful way. Like, look, if you go up to your mom and you tell them, I appreciate everything you do for me, and I love how you help me in so many ways, and you could really help me by doing this one thing, or maybe just waiting a few minutes after the game until maybe you tell me everything that I did wrong, right? So I think we try to work with the situation. The younger they are, we as adults have to step in and then try to do it in a positive way by pointing out maybe what's happening from the child's response, more so to, oh, you're doing that wrong. Let me tell you how it's wrong. And then as they get older, we try to actually empower the individual to communicate, because that's one of the greatest things as coaches we can teach kids, is to be able to communicate in ways to make their situation better. Because that truly is part of becoming resilient, is to be able to share what's uncomfortable and to get to a solution. So important.
Yeah. I'm guilty. I know my own kid, the couple of times that I had the chance to coach him, he probably got the short end of the stick compared to everybody else. And that was probably more on me than on him, maybe in any way. So I think as parents, we can all be guilty of that at some point.
Yeah, but I probably am too.
Yeah, just at least having the wherewithal to reflect and understand that, okay, I got to work at this. Is certainly helpful. We get some questions here about tennis versus being an individual sport and team sport, but I think the thing that in hockey that a lot of our very best, our NHL coaches realize is they are coaching individuals within a team game. Mm-hmm. And so at the base of your pyramid, you had understanding the person, right? So as a foundation, it's every kid's a little different. But when you moved up that pyramid a little bit, you got into some other things, and you spoke to this earlier on proactive, positive talk on the bench, maybe with your kids. Would that be something with younger kids that is leading them maybe into a self-talk kind of teaching them how to positively self-talk? Is that something that's going on there?
I think so. I think it's an entree into that, Ken, where, we'll talk about where do you want your mind to be when you're on the bench? And I have a routine that I used to teach. But when you get to the bench, first thing you got to do is sort of have a response, right? And that response is, some positive self-talk. And that can be also talk to your line mates, like, hey, man, good shift. I know it didn't work out. We're going to get the next one. We're bringing energy, we're bringing physicality, whatever, right? You know, that we're going to stay on the bench. So I think they go hand in hand, right? Because what we've seen also in tennis with doubles is that often we tell people stuff to help them, but we're really saying it to ourselves as well, right? Like, man, that was a tough shift. We couldn't get out of our zone, but all we got to do is this, right? We just got to get into our breakout and move the puck fast. But you're talking to yourself too. So I think we try to teach this routine of this positive response, come over, just try to say something encouraging to yourself or to a line mate. Take the time to recover, clear your head, because you're kind of reviewing the last shift when you come over. You might be doing again as line mates or one other guy, and you might be doing it internally. And then clear that out through breathing. You know, take 2 deep breaths, clear your head, and then move it to, all right, what's the commitment for next shift? What are we refocusing on? Next shift, we get out there, we're moving the puck quick. Let's move the puck around. And all right, we got this, let's go. And then bring all your attention to the game, because you don't want to spend too much time over there in your own world because there's a game going on. You need to watch it. So this short routine of just responding well, just this relaxation of bringing it down from the shift, and then this refocusing on, this is our commitment. And then as you watch the shift on before you, you're starting to get ready. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get on the ice and do it again. So I think there's some flow that happens on the bench that I'm not so sure people talk about very much. And so then when you're training self-talk, you can build it into a routine. One of the issues that we have in psychology, and we know it, is that we have all these great ideas, but people have no clue how to use it. Like, it's great. You got all these great ideas, Larry, but how do you actually put it into play? Well, you do it through routines. That helps people structure their mind and their behavior as they go through a performance. So I know when I get to the bench, I do my response, I drink a little water, I say something encouraging, I take a couple deep breaths and let that kind of wash away, and then I focus on the commitment. And then I get my mind back and getting ready to go for my next shift. If you teach kids that structure, the self-talk comes easier, right? So now, well, got to be something positive when I come in here. Maybe my head's full of negatives. I'm going to have to work on that and get to something productive, something positive. Say something encouraging to my buddy to help me kind of get out of my own negativity. So if you're going to work on this, you need to show them how to use it during the game. But yes, that self-talk, definitely in a team environment, you have that opportunity to have the people around you help you get back to a good place, to become present, to become positive, to focus on your purpose, to focus on your process of the way you're doing things.
And you see that with your athletes. You know, you have some that are really good at brushing off what just happened, and they're able to get into their next best shift right away. It's like, no issue. And then you see other athletes that, you know, they're in their own head, and you can tell. And one thing seems to just, and they just, you know, so those are the athletes that, you know, again, the more you know about each individual athlete, the better you're going to be as a coach at trying to help them through those issues and create,
And that's where you've got to get at the core of what the thinking is, because their thinking might be based on something that their parents are saying to them. Like, you know, you've been bad lately and what's wrong with your game, you know. So who knows where that's coming from. And if you can get to the core thoughts that are driving the bus, because in my philosophy, we deal with whatever the environment throws at us, and then we respond to it by the way we think, then by how we emotionally and physically respond, and then through our behavior and our performance through that stress cycle. And you have to get at the thoughts, because those are the drivers of the bus. And if a kid's sitting there thinking, I should not make mistakes, then no matter what you do, they're going to struggle. So you have to get at that core thought and help them realize, like, the way you're thinking is faulty. I mean, let's go watch McDavid right now. I bet he turns the puck over and show him, you know, at some point, that nobody's perfect. It's okay. And then when you can start to build in this idea of acceptance of what is and how I feel about it, that, again, I started this talk off with that. we can't control the things that happen to us on a large basis. We control our response in the present.
Mhm.
And so teaching the kids this early on and in the way that they think, hey, you come back to the bench, it's over, man. You're going to have to just live with it. Whatever, good, bad, ugly, whatever, it is what it is. The only thing that matters is to be ready for the next shift. That's it. That's all that you got. You don't have the one in the third period. You don't have the one back from the first period. You just got this shift coming up.
I think that from a coaching standpoint, it is just understand the basic change their thinking changes their behavior. You know,
Right.
You have to, if you want to make an impact, you have to get to the end, their underlying thoughts for sure.
And we, you know, as my friend who's the director of coaching, Ola Malmquist at USTA Player Development says, in some ways we brainwash the kids because the way we talk creates their inner self-talk. Now, we're not as powerful as their parents in that socialization for the first 8, 10,
For
12
sure.
years, but we play a role and we can help to massage that and start to turn it. And then when we can really start to work with them and say, do you realize that, you know, if we go look at this gold medal game, that there were X number of turnovers, the best players in the world? This is normal, dude. Like, it's okay. You're going to make mistakes. The very thing that I want people to do is to fear failure and not allow themselves to open up to how good they can be. That's one of the worst, most frustrating things that goes on. And it's really hard to deal with, but we have to find a way to accept what is. And then acceptance in a high performance world is only as good as your commitment. So then once you accept something, it's not about complacency. It's about committing, being determined, like, okay, I'm going and getting that puck and we're making a play on the next shift.
And
So
I trust as a coach, I trust you to go out
yes,
again and play. You're gonna do the job for us. And it's,
yes,
you know, can you create that mindset by backing it up with your players? And they
exactly.
surprise you.
They will surprise you when you believe in them first.
Mhm.
So
Dave, did we have a question you said?
Yeah, we had a question. My son is a squirt, and I know the main focus at that age is to work on building skills, but I would love to help him on the mental approach to the game as well. Any tips to pass along for a player of that age? I know we touched a little bit on it.
yeah, so that this kind of younger 10 and under, well, I think, you know, obviously it's going to be in smaller doses, and it's going to be less, you know, intense or complex. What I teach to players at the NTDP is not what I would teach to a 10-year-old. So I think you use the game a lot to help them with their mental game. You know, one of the things that little kids are really good at is visualization, imagery. Their minds are so creative, and taking advantage of that, getting them to create in their minds, like, okay, so what does it look like when you have just a great 3-on-2 coming down the ice and one of your teammates scores? What's happening there, right? And just visualizing that. And again, it's all age and stage dependent, but so I think at that age, visualizing, and I use the Michael Phelps formula on that with visualization. You visualize yourself at your best and what that looks and feels like, what you're doing. And then you visualize yourself under adversity and how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to respond. And so for little kids, that's, yeah, I missed the open net. What am I going to do? I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn and go the other way and go after the puck or get back in position. So I think with visualization, we can start to teach these resilience. I think, again, at that young age, the breathe and believe is a great technique, that when something's going wrong, take a step back, breathe, calm yourself, focus on one thing that you can control, something simple that you're going to make happen. So those would be two places I would start that are pretty simple techniques that kids are usually pretty good at.
Great. Well, Larry, we're coming up on the hour.
Already.
Goes by really quick. Yeah.
Can we do another hour? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
I like talking hockey.
Is there anything that you want to conclude with? Anything we didn't touch on you think might be important for our audience, or have we covered it? You know, like last thoughts?
Yeah, I'll try to maybe like summarize some things. I think if you want to develop players who are resilient, who are confident, who always compete. You have to help them really have an open mind and embrace challenges. It's funny, we're at a level of this, one of our coaches, Richard Ashby, when something's going on in practice and the player's upset about it, he's like, awesome, great. You can't make a forehand? This is exactly what we need to train for, because somewhere in a match at some point, you're going to have the same struggle. And right now is going to determine how you're going to deal with that later. So we try to help them embrace the challenges a lot in training. And I think changing the way we view things. If kids are struggling, that doesn't mean that you're terrible as a coach. That might actually mean you're doing your job. Like, you're exposing the things that are difficult. Now help them through it, right? That's kind of what we need to do as a coach, is take them to the places that are uncomfortable, help them through it over time. They don't have to get it right away. As they're going through these experiences, know that you're going to get reactions. You're going to get emotion, and that's normal. And so what you got to do when kids are struggling, and I found this technique works personally, instead of going up and saying, what's wrong with you? And it's like, hey, I see that you're frustrated. What's going on? Because in their minds, what's happening is the why question. Why aren't you playing well? Why is this going this way? Why did coach make me do this? Why are my parents standing right on the glass, banging on it? They're judging the whole process, right? And starting to get negative. And we got to change it to the what and the how questions. What are you going to do? How are you going to go about it? And through a way that we approach them, hey, I see that you're angry. I get it. I would be too. But what do you want in this situation? How do you want to respond? We can't control what's happening out there. All we can do is just a little bit of what you got in the next moment. So the way we interact with them allows us then to open their minds to, you know what, I can deal with this in a good way. And I think those are two very important things that we have to keep in mind. And then obviously, as we move along, you got to teach them the mental skills, and we've got to put them in environments where it's uncomfortable, but yet it's reasonable. They can actually succeed if they apply their skills, if they apply themselves in a good way.
That's great advice. Dave, I think that's a wrap probably for today.
Okay, we've been asking some of our other guests, all of our other guests, if you could look back when you first started coaching, what would you tell your younger self, or any advice for yourself?
Ooh. So this is for me, Dave?
That's for Larry, yeah. He's already grilled us with this.
So what would I tell my...
This is the curveball that you said you didn't want.
I like curveballs. I love the curveball, man. Don't throw that curveball at me. If you hang it, it's going over left center field.
Overcoming adversity, Larry.
That's right. I'm stalling, you can see. So, what would I tell myself as a young coach now, what I know now?
Mm-hmm.
I think because I would, very honest with you, I wasn't very good as a young coach. I started out as a coach when I was 16, coaching little league kids, and I was all about winning and, that whole thing. And I changed my mindset over the years for sure. But I would tell myself, you know what? The most important things are the relationships you're developing and how you're communicating with people. Because if they trust you and you do the right things by them, then the other things can happen. I want to teach them to be able how to stop. If I have a relationship with them, if they want to listen to me, I got a chance. So I would really tell myself to slow down, make it about them, make it about their learning, be patient, build a relationship, and really think about what they need to do and how to get that out of them instead of what I need for me. So, because when I started as a young coach, it really was about me. I didn't know any different at that point, and I hope that I've changed over the years. So,
that's awesome.
On
awesome
our
advice.
Journey someplace.
Well, it had to, right? Someone would have just punched me a good one or something, knocked me out for being egotistical and self-centered. So, I think one of the things you learn this from though is that you get around good coaches. You learn so much. And I got to say this before we sign off, that I've learned so much from the coaches I've worked with over the years that I hope that I've helped them, but I think maybe they don't know this, but they've helped me more than I helped them probably, because I've learned so much about how to work with people and and how to work with teams and create cultures and environments that, it's stuff that we have our Compete Like a Champion podcast that we do. Everybody can check it out on iTunes. The stuff that we're talking about every week, just how do we get to this place of excellence, each one of us, and what are the things that we need to do that? And I'll tell you what, one of my ways I hope that I'm getting to excellence is just spending time with great coaches, because there's so much to be learned.
That's really great advice. And that's like, that's the big thing, is these great coaches are great people, culture builders. And that's, the thing that's what drives them, and that's what makes them really good. So thanks again, Dr. Lauer. Ken, great job. You're now a part-time host. And then just want to remind everybody, tomorrow we have goalie day. We're staying on the mental skills with mental skills for goalies, but I'm sure that there's going to be stuff that anybody can take out of it, if you're a goalie or not, because goalies are athletes too and players too. And then on Friday, we have Assistant General Manager of the Chicago Blackhawks, Norm McIver, who is a superstar defenseman for Minnesota Duluth, with a great D partner, Guy Gosselin, one of our ADM managers. And, Guy's going to be on, and we're going to kind of dive deep in who was the leading catalyst, either Guy or Norm. So it's going to be a fun conversation, and we will see everybody tomorrow at 3:30. Thanks.
Thank you.